In the past 3 years, I've gone from randomly moving and naming files to haphazardly editing video clips and not having a clue on how to use After Effects and DaVinci Resolve, to finally being able to be much more efficient at editing a video without feeling like I just wasted about 20 years of my life. I want to first start off with probably the most overlooked item in the editing realm, your chair. It's not just any chair. Mine is definitely built ergonomically so that I can have that back support when I'm sitting for really long periods of time. And believe me, I am sitting there for sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day editing. And yes, it's to a fault because I love editing. I can't help it. After that comes your mouse. And I do use a laptop and I do have that trackpad, but I also prefer using a mouse and I just like the tactile feel of it. And I also like being able to use the hot buttons on my gaming mouse so that I can sit there and switch between my windows and my editing software instead of trying to sit there and press every single time. And over time that adds up and you don't want to be wasting time while you're editing. Then there's where are you editing? And that has to do with, are you editing on that PC or are you editing on a laptop like I am? Now, I prefer a laptop only because I can take this anywhere I go. Or if I want to just go sit on my couch and do that, I can bring the laptop with me, throw on some headphones, and just start editing. Speaking of headphones, I do use the Sennheiser HD280 Pros. These are so good when it comes to just the noise cancellation. Put these on. Yeah, it like silences my thoughts. And the clarity, and it just brings the sound down to more of a neutral balance with the bass and the treble, and it cleans up that audio. So that I used to use the gaming headphones and I was like, yeah, I love that bass, and it just shakes my head and rattles my teeth. But I didn't find that to be as conducive when it comes to when you're video editing, because I need to hear all those little sounds and I need to make sure they're in the right pitch without being some sort of audio file over it. But I do like to hear all the different things that are happening within my video and making sure that it's accurate. Now, moving on to the editing tools that I use After Effects and I use DaVinci Resolve. And both of those programs have their pros and cons. Now, the reason why I like using DaVinci Resolve is because of that color editing is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's really hard to beat. And I also like the node-based editing when it comes to the color tab. But when it comes to virtual effects, I much prefer After Effects just for the simple fact of using layer-based editing. For some reason, my brain doesn't really function well with the Fusion tab inside of DaVinci Resolve, and I don't know why, but there's a lot of things in there that I can play with, but when it comes to really heavy visual effects, I much prefer being layer-based so I can see visually from a front to back what's happening. And I know you can get used to Fusion, but for me, After Effects has really been my go-to when it comes to the visual style that I try to create. And it's only because I'm so used to using that program. So before you do anything else, make sure you clean up your desktop. And the way you can do that is you can take a folder, create it, label it desktop junk, and anything that is not related to your editing, throw it into that folder. Now, when it comes to tools and efficiency, when I'm editing, you have to remember that in order to be efficient, you need to be organized. So to solve that, in order to be much more efficient at handling these files, I just created a template on my laptop right after I cleaned up my entire laptop, because the last thing you want to do is try to search for a folder among 1,000 folders. And you can see here the way I like to use my folder structure. You can take the folders, drag and drop it in, and it creates the list automatically inside your software. That way you know every single time it is the same thing when you put it into your editing tabs. Now, in order to store this thing, you also want to make sure that you have multiple solid state drives. Now, since I use a laptop, I do have to have external solid state drives. Now, you can use a cloud-based service if you want to, and that's fine. That way you can offload any of these project files, and they're going to be really large project files, but you need to be able to make sure that you're offloading all this data, and that will also help with that organization part. Inside of your editing software, you also want to make sure you're setting up your keyboard shortcuts, because that, even though it's only going to save you a couple seconds sometimes per click, or just by activating one shortcut, now that adds up over a lot of different projects. So make sure you're learning or setting up your hotkeys and your shortcuts to make sure that you're as efficient as possible. And you will get efficient just by doing it over and over and over again. I like to leave a file on my desktop so that if I forget a shortcut, I can just double click on it, pops right up. I'm like, oh, that's right, I remember that now, and close it. Another thing that actually helps me a lot when it comes to organization is using Notion. I use this app on every single project that I have. Everything from using a shot list all the way down to a storyboard. I use it as a calendar, and I use it for my script writing and making sure that everything that I'm doing with inside of a video is written down. Now, it depends on how intricate my video is. Will I script it all out? Sometimes will I use bullet points? Sometimes. Do I write a storyboard every single time? No, but there are other times I do, and I like to take reference shots and be like, okay, I'm trying to recreate this, or I'm trying to recreate that, or I want to blend the two and I try to come up with a visual effect and I storyboard that out. Notion has been a game changer when it comes to that organization, when it comes to creating those shot lists so I don't miss a beat when it comes to that. Because if you're organized in your scenes and you're organized on your set, you're going to be organized on your edit. And that's what I've discovered, especially lately, and utilizing those kind of techniques to make sure from front to back, the flow of the edit has been so much better because my organization has been so much better. Now, when it comes to the computer specs of my laptop, it does have a 1 terabyte solid state drive. It also has the M2 Max on there as far as the processor is concerned. It has 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it's got a great screen for the monitor, and it's just kind of like an all-in-one tool. So I didn't have to piece together a desktop and figure out, well, I need this and I need that. I need all these different things, and then piece it all together, and there I have a PC, which I do have one of those, and I have used that before as well. But I much prefer my laptop just because it's so much more portable. One thing I would have changed on this laptop is I would have added more RAM. Not a lot of people speak about that. You want to max out that RAM as best you can. If you're going into a much more visual effects type of video, you need to have as much RAM as you can. I have noticed sometimes that if I'm really intensive on it, it'll start lagging, or it'll start saying you've run out of buffer, and I'll have to clear up some space. I'll have to shut down some other programs. So make sure that when you build out your PC or when you build out your laptop, make sure you have enough RAM in there. When I use this stuff, I'm plugging in my J5, and that I can plug in my mouse, I can plug in my headset, I can plug in all the little SD cards, and I can plug in the large SD cards. It's kind of been one of those things where it's just like all in one, and I snap it into my laptop and it's all right there. Instead of having all these different wires and plugs, I can just have one thing plugged in, and there it is. Before going into the edit, I always want to make sure that my planning is on point, which will help me be much more efficient when I'm editing. And that has to do with coming up with the idea, writing it down, whether it's in Notion or if I'm writing on a piece of paper or wherever I'm at, making sure I'm taking those notes. So when I do have those ideas, I can flesh it out later and make sure that I haven't missed anything, because sometimes I will come up with an idea and then all of a sudden, there it goes. I'm like, oh, I'll remember it later. And then I never remember it later. And then I'm like, well, there goes all those ideas. Now, if you're going to try and come up with something just off the top of your head and then try to press record, you're going to stare at that camera for a very long time. And I guarantee you that camera won't smile back. So I hope this video helps you with your editing journey, because that's exactly what it is. It's a journey. It's a journey to become more efficient and have fun while you're doing it. Go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.